Welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You figured that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show, and I will tell you, I don't know how I'm feeling today. It is a flu Friday. Could this be the flu show? It could be. I don't know, but I'm not feeling it. But I thought to myself, do I really want to go into the weekend, a weekend where the Eagles are going to take on the Chiefs in a rematch of the Super Bowl? Am I really not going to do a show on Friday? And I said to myself, Self, you got to go do a show. And then I said to myself, Self, stop talking to yourself. It's weird. So we're here. A lot to get into. You may have noticed the other day that we didn't get to everything that was on the docket. Now, am I going to blame Video Guy Amadeo for talking so much? Maybe at least a little bit. Comments are now live in the bottom right-hand side of the screen. If you are over on Facebook or on YouTube, you can just comment away over on the Russ Joy Show Facebook and YouTube page or on the Joy Media pages. And if you're on X, following me at Joy on Broad, you can click on the video first, go into Periscope mode, and then put your comment there, and I can bring it up on the screen. Okay. So much to get to, such little time. I don't know how long I'll last here until I pass out. So we're going to try to get through as much of this as we possibly can. We have to talk really quickly about what happened last night. Something that, if we're being fair, I don't think we were all prepared to acknowledge as a possibility a few weeks ago. If you remember, when the Phillies went up to Citi Field, they looked like a lost bunch. They looked like a bunch of misfit toys that no longer had passion for the game of baseball, seemed to have had their talent stolen like the Monstars in Space Jam. It was like somebody grabbed Bryce Harper's bat and the Mets just took all the talent away. And this Phillies team looked listless. It looked lifeless. And you compounded things by the loss of Zach Wheeler. And you said, man, like if there were ever a time for this team to galvanize, it should be the series in New York. And it didn't happen. It was bad. And then if you've been following along with Phightin Words, which you can find on all of the Joy Media channels as well, you'll know that last week Anthony Sanfilippo put out there, the Phillies are not going to blow a lead to the Mets. The Mets aren't going to catch the Phillies. And we said, oh my God, this could be it. This could be the thing that breaks the Philadelphia Phillies. Well, it didn't happen. The Phillies went out and put together an impressive series against a hated division rival, probably the most hated division rival in the NL East. And they effectively pounded the Mets into submission. And the good news, if you're a Phillies fan, is you're even closer to the Milwaukee Brewers than you were when the series started. And you might have put the Mets' playoff hopes not on life support, but you've certainly done a good job of putting your foot on the throat of the Mets. Remember last year, we had this conversation last year, down the stretch in the regular season and then going into the playoffs. My big issue with the 2024 Phillies is that they started off really hot. They went over to play in London. They were about a 500 team after that. And they did not put away the Mets. They didn't put away the Braves. And they just kept letting their NL East rivals hang in, remain in, and build some confidence. And when the Phillies went up to Citi Field and got boat raced, remember, like Kyle Schwarber was in the midst of like an 0 for 16 streak. It was awful. It felt like, oh my God, the Mets are going to get hot. The Phillies are finally broken because Zach Wheeler isn't going to be around, and maybe they've lost it. And then the Phillies lose Trey Turner, and on the same day that they put him on the IL, Alec Boehm goes out, and you start going, oh my God, like, what's this team going to do? Does this team have the requisite weapons? It's not like you can get bailed out by a trade deadline. It's not like there are players on waivers that are all-star caliber that you can just kind of go finesse and add to the roster and have be playoff eligible. Like that wasn't in the cards for this team. And yet they went out against the Mets, and they asserted their dominance. And I know that it's kind of like a running joke on Twitter right now about how the Mets are such a great team at home and a horrific team on the road. And the questions are being floated out there about, are the Mets cheating right now? Is there something going on with the Mets this season to explain the home-road discrepancy? I mean, right now, as of recording on Friday, September 12th, the Mets are 45-27 at home, which is a great record, 18 games above 500. On the road, they're 31-44. That's 13 games under 500. That, my friends, represents a 31-game disparity. That is gigantic. The chasm between being a dominant team at home and a piss-poor one on the road kind of makes you wonder a little bit. How bad is it? The Florida Marlins, who this season are 68-79, 11 games under 500. They're third in the NL East right now. They have more road wins, 34, than this massive roster, this massive payroll of the New York Mets, who only have 31. 31, by the way, home wins has the Mets on par with the Nationals, who reside in the basement of the NL East, and only one win ahead of the Atlanta Braves, who are fourth in the division, who only have 30 wins on the road. Something just feels weird. Now, am I going to say that there's some cheating going on? Am I going to throw that accusation against the Mets? No, of course I wouldn't. I wouldn't do such a thing. Clearly, they're cheating. But their home record is significantly better. Now, the good news for the Phillies is not only do they have the most wins on the road in their division, they also happen to have the best record at home in the NL East at 49-23. And they did that largely on the back of being able to go out and pull off a 4-game sweep of the Mets. And there were some interesting stats. There were some interesting things that happened, especially in the finale against the Mets. Because if you paid attention, Jesus Luzardo had a very, very rough go to start. And then he really settled in. And it was actually kind of shocking how bad Luzardo was early. But then once he locked in, he was incredible. I think he retired 22 consecutive batters after giving up 4 runs and 5 hits in the first 6 batters he faced. So, here's a fun little stat. Jesus Luzardo against the Mets in the series finale, with the opportunity to kill any momentum that the Mets have, to kill any hope that the Mets might have of trying to get back in the NL East race, maybe even pick up a game and feel better about the wild card standings. Luzardo gives up 4 runs and 5 hits on the first 6 batters he faces in the game. After that, he goes 7 2/3 innings, allows 0 base runners. That is the first time, by the way, in Major League Baseball history. First time ever. 4 runs, 5 hits in the first 6 batters. Then you go 22 consecutive batters without getting on base. Bananagrams. And when you think about what this Phillies team could be going into the postseason, there's obviously the question about who ultimately is the third starter, right? Because we know Christopher Sanchez is number 1. We know that Ranger Suarez is a cold-blooded killer. He probably will be your number 2. And then the question is, all right, between 3 and 4, Nola has had a few moments where you go, okay, cool, like mix up, split up the lefties with a righty. Nola has some experience in the postseason. We all know that Nola can fall apart really quickly. And Jesus Luzardo had moments in this season where it looked like he was tipping pitches, but it's probably worth noting. Luzardo's only gotten blown up in 4 of his starts this year. He's got an ERA just over 4, but if you look at the rest of his starts, he's been pretty damn phenomenal. And if you're going to put him in as the 3rd starter in this rotation, or even the 4th starter in this rotation, it's a significantly different looking scenario for these Phillies than it was about a month ago. Because remember, a month or 2 ago, and even before Zach Wheeler got hurt, we were talking about, all right, which one is more likely to go to the pen, Luzardo or Ranger Suarez? And then when Nola came back and he looked horrific, the question was, oh my God, can they really go 1 righty with Wheeler and then 3 lefties and then send Nola to the pen? Could Nola be left off the playoff roster? There were a lot of questions. And it feels like right now everything is starting to come together. Now, I haven't been on Twitter a lot today because Twitter right now is just not the Twitter that I want. We can get into that later. But I was wondering how long it would take for a radio personality to throw out the idea of saying that, are the Phillies peaking too soon? Because it's middle of September. There are still games to be played in the regular season. They're hot now. They're playing well even without Trey Turner, without Alec Bowman, without Zach Wheeler. The starting rotation has stepped up in a big way. The bullpen looks lights out. And this lineup that we've had a lot of questions, comments, and concerns about feels like it's kind of hitting its stride. And we cannot move on from the Phillies until we mention, at least a little bit, Harrison Bader and what Harrison Bader has meant to this Phillies team. Make no mistake about it. You can go back and watch this show from around the trade deadline. And I didn't say that the Bader signing or the Bader trade was dog shit. It wasn't the impact bat that I was hoping Dave Dombrowski was going to go all in for. And I believe that there's a clip out there where I said something to the effect of, if he's even above a mediocre hitter, then that's found money. If he's even better than a replacement level player, Dombrowski will have done a pretty good job, but maybe not a good enough job to make this team a contender. Well, Bader's been phenomenal. He's been a great addition to this team. I want you to actually hear really quickly Bader after the game on Thursday, talking about what it's like to play in Philadelphia. Obviously, came from a town that has been hit or miss on the attendance, hit or miss on the playoff appearances. Let's go out to Bader really quickly. And I just want people to hear from his own mouth what he thinks of playing in Philadelphia and what it's like to play in front of these fans. Because Let's be honest. There is a certain endearing quality when an athlete seems to get it. All right, let's go out.
Here as a visitor, but what is this environment been like getting to play on the home side?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's everything I've really kind of worked for and could ask for. There's a lot of passion in the stands. There's a lot at stake, and I really wouldn't have it any other way. And I think it's just a great baseball city. So just to be a part of it, being dealt here in the middle of the season, has just been a blessing, honestly, and it's been a pleasure thus far, and I just want to make the most of it every single day.
The thing that I love about Harrison Bader probably the most is that he legitimately looks like he belongs on like Ken Griffey 94 baseball or something. Ken Griffey baseball for N64. That's what he looks like to me. He's been fantastic. So far, since being acquired, or since August 1st, let's go August 1st, he's hitting .339. He's got an OPS of .403, slugging .639. He's got 39 hits, 9 doubles, 14 RBI. He's had big moments. We talked about the fact that he's had clutch hits. He's had clutch home runs. There was a game where we actually bemoaned the fact that Bader was the guy who tied the game with a deep home run to left field, and then the high money guys, the big money guys, couldn't deliver and close that game out or keep the momentum going and pick up a win. Bader's been fantastic. There's no getting around it. Now, it's funny because going into the season, we all kind of remarked, how does Dombrowski not have Kyle Schwarber re-signed? How does he not have JT Realmuto re-signed? How does he not have Ranger Suarez re-signed? And now, it kind of feels like we have to have a conversation about Harrison Bader, doesn't it? I mean, you can go one of a few ways here. Sometimes fans get obsessed with a new signing who does really well in a very limited scope, right, in a very limited time frame, and they say, all right, give that guy multiple years. I think he was going to make $6 million. There's a mutual option for 2026. And like he's probably going to get at least $10 million a year, you would think now, maybe a 3-year deal, 4-year deal. Like he's going to cash in a big way. The defense has been fantastic. He's stolen home runs. It's amazing to see somebody who plays the outfield who defensively looks like knows what they're doing, and then also at the plate can perform, can get extra base hits, can drive the ball to the gaps, can hit the ball out of the park. Now, I don't want to overreact here, right? Again, all of those numbers were since August 1st. He's had a great 6-week stretch here, six and a half week stretch. Would I go gangbusters and outspend everyone in baseball to keep Harrison Bader? Maybe not. But you at least have to have the conversation if you're the Phillies. I mean, Castellanos, you would expect is going to be gone after this year, right? Could bringing back Bader on an affordable deal make sense? I think it could. I think ultimately for Bader, he's looking around and he said, this is what you work your whole career for. This is what you try to get to as a player. You want to play in an atmosphere like this. You want to play in a city like this. You want to play in a baseball city like this, in front of fans like this. And so you don't want to overrate that experience that he's had so far. But if you get to the offseason, let's say Bader continues to produce well, regardless of how far this team goes into the playoffs, hopefully beyond the first round, it'd be great to get to a World Series, maybe even win it. If you have a positive end of the season and you have a series that ends it where either you win the World Series, you make the World Series, you go out, really fighting, I have to imagine that Bader's a guy that has endeared himself to some of the guys in that locker room. I mean, remember, Garrett Stubbs was a guy that this team did not want to send down because of vibes. Bader came in here and legitimately looks like a guy from a 90s N64 baseball game. And he just seems like he's a good vibes guy. And we know I've been one to say, I don't give a shit about your vibes if you can't perform. This dude is performing. He's taken a lot of pressure off of the rest of the lineup. And now when you're down Trey Turner and you're down Alec Boehm, it sure is nice to have a guy that you can rely on from that side of the plate. Just simple stuff. I like Harrison Bader a lot. I would say that it's probably worth a legitimate conversation about a multi-year deal, maybe around $10 million per. We will see. So I saw Amadea was saying that there's a big announcement in WWE and it's late, and I guess it just happened. Chris Fried says WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, so this leaked out yesterday or 2 days ago. That WrestleMania in 2027, I think it is going to go, so it's WrestleMania 43, is going to go to Saudi Arabia. There are comments out there, there are thoughts out there that maybe WrestleMania 43 is going to be one of 2 WrestleManias. They usually do 2-night WrestleManias. There's been a thought, could they do one in Saudi Arabia and then night 2 maybe is in London or New York or Los Angeles or wherever. And there's also been this thought out there that, maybe the WWE is going to do WrestleMania Saudi Arabia and do a WrestleMania stateside, maybe 2 days and 2 days. I'm looking right now on Twitter. The live comments on YouTube are horrific. I mean, people are not thrilled about Saudi Arabia getting WrestleMania. There are a lot of people, by the way, who kind of build their years around going to WrestleMania. Some people build their year around going to the Super Bowl. Some build it around going to WrestleMania. I have to imagine that there are a lot of people who will not be making the trek to Saudi Arabia. If you're a TKO fan, if you're a big UFC fan, you're probably already very well aware of how this works. You're probably very well aware of it if you're a WWE fan, that they've been doing Crown Jewel over in Saudi Arabia. It's pretty wild to me that they're going to send WrestleMania abroad. I thought like maybe a SummerSlam would be something they would try to take there first, maybe kind of do a soft launch. But no, they're taking the biggest premium live event. They're taking it to Saudi Arabia. Good God. All right, now I'm going to go out to some of the questions, comments, and concerns out on whatchamacallit, out on YouTube and Facebook and X. Let's see. Raymond Supper says, Phillies tasted a lot of adversity and having success overcoming that. It's also making Topper into a better manager. I actually agree with that. I think that the one thing that you probably feel better about this year is that they seem to be getting stronger. It's why I made the joke, is Sports Talk Radio going to say, oh, did they peak too early, 610, 632? Like, no. I think it's a fair point, though, that like when you are without pieces and you have to start to get creative, you can't just roll out the same lineup, right, where it's copy-paste every night. It does kind of push you a little bit as a manager. I don't want this to sound like we're on The Bachelor or The Bachelorette. I want to find somebody who can push me. But if you're Rob Thompson, like, it's probably not the worst thing in the world that you need to get creative with your lineups and that you need to get creative with the personnel that you choose. I think the most interesting thing here is going to be, if Turner gets back when we expect him to, just before the start of the playoffs, and if the pitching continues at the way that it is right now, I think the most interesting thing is going to be, will they put Nola in as the third starter to break up the lefties? Or will they, in a potentially short series, decide, no, we're going to roll 3 lefties and then have Aaron Nola in there as the fourth? That, to me, is going to be interesting. Joe Fisher says, not going to lie, Bader, I thought, was going to be like Marsh and Rojas. He is surprised, and I think he's better than both of them. I agree. Though we have to give Marsh a lot of credit, too, because Marsh, since May, has been a pretty damn good hitter. Marsh is one of those guys that, like, you want to root for, right? Like, don't we want to have these conversations about guys like Stott and Marsh taking another step? And it felt like early in the season, they just weren't. It felt like they both regressed. And now you're hitting moments where you've seen different points in the season. Stott has looked like a much more competent hitter. And Marsh certainly has looked better in the last month and a half, 2 months. An overall positive. Now, the thing I'm most impressed with is that Nick Castellanos hasn't become, he hasn't had sour grapes. He hasn't become a malcontent. It'd be easy for a guy like Nick Castellanos, who makes the money that he does, who's used to being an everyday player, had an Ironman streak like that. If you're a Nick Castellanos, there's a lot of humble pie that you're eating. And I'm not even saying like he was, I've gotten no indications that he's been a bad guy in the clubhouse. So there's like a small part of you that kind of sits back and goes, man, if he wanted to be a malcontent, if he wanted to make things uncomfortable, he could, and he's not. And by the way, Max Kepler, a guy who we crucified for a lot of the season, Max Kepler's getting it going. So now you've got Thompson rolling 4 outfielders, all of whom probably to some extent deserve playing time. Castellanos last night had some big hits as well. You got Castellanos, you got Marsh, you got Bader. And now I blanked. Why did I blank? We got Castellanos, we got Bader, you got Marsh. There's another one. This is the flu. This is my flu show. Kepler. I was just talking about Kepler. Kepler's had some big hits. Castellanos has had some big hits. Marsh has been pretty consistent. Bader's been an absolute stud. Let's all feel good about the Philadelphia Phillies. I want to move off. We got to move off the Phillies. We got to get somewhere else. You may or may not be aware of this. Jalen Carter spit on Dak Prescott and sent Twitter into a frenzy for a good long while. There was a quote that came out the other day, came out on Wednesday after we were done doing this show. And it was something that I thought was good because one of the things that apparently the NFL took into consideration when not extending a suspension for Jalen Carter beyond that first game that he didn't play, part of it was that he had showed contrition. And so there's been this question about, did he apologize to his teammates? And I wouldn't say that it's the most important thing in the world. I wouldn't say that if you're a teammate of Jalen Carter that you're owed like an individual apology, but there was a big guy who plays on the defensive line who had to play a hell of a lot of snaps, and we gave him kudos for being in shape enough to play all those snaps. Jordan Davis pulled back the curtain a little bit on Jalen Carter and what he had to say to his team. Now remember, after the game against the Cowboys, Jalen Hurts said he and Jalen Carter are on the same page. Let's go out, though, to his fellow defensive line mate, Jordan Davis. Give a little bit of color here. Give a little bit of context around what Jalen Carter had to say to his teammates.
Have to maybe talk to him a little bit, or
Nah, he knows.
afterwards, or
He knows, and it's just more of an understanding that he comes with, and just like he's like, I made a dumb decision, and he's just like, I won't have it again, and we believe that and we hold that, and I know like everybody did D-line, we don't look at him like like it was a problem or anything, it was just unfortunate the way it happened, but that's just what we dealt, but he came to us, he apologized, don't really need no apology on the D-line, we already know what's going on.
Okay, so Jordan Davis says we didn't need an apology, but he gave us an apology anyway. As far as I'm concerned, that should be water fully under the bridge, right? I think it's done. It has to be done. And now you get ready for a Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes rematch. Let's not forget there was a time the Eagles went to Arrowhead. Nick Sirianni was yelling at Chiefs fans as he left the field. Eagles had the last laugh in the Super Bowl in February. You have to assume that the Chiefs are going to be down two of their top wideouts, are probably not going to be thrilled. It's a late afternoon game, so you're going to get that combo of Kevin Burkhardt and Tom Brady. I'll actually be more interested. I'll be interested in the game, obviously, but I'm going to be really interested to see how Tom Brady talks about Patrick Mahomes, who's viewed as the best player of his generation, taking on Jalen Hurts, who the media feels very torn on. I mean, remember, Joe Montana, we talked about this on the show a week or two ago. Joe Montana named 4 quarterbacks that he would build a team around, not including Brock Purdy, and Hurts was one of them. It feels like the people who understand the concept of winning, they really love Jalen Hurts. They love the fighting mentality. They love what the guy brings from a leadership perspective. I think that, like, of all the games to listen to the national telecast, this one might be the one that's the most worth paying attention to. Now, I have 2 other things that I want to get to really quickly. Actually, 3. Let's go hockey for a little bit. There was a gigantic rumor out there about Kirill Kaprisov, who plays for the Minnesota Wild, and could be a massive coup for any team in free agency in 2026. I'm actually going to take the comments down here real quick. We're going to pull up the Frank Saravalli tweet because it was bananagrams, and there's been some refuting since this tweet initially went out. But Frank Saravalli puts out, sources say Minnesota Wild superstar Kirill Kaprisov. We're going to start over. I got to talk like a normal person. Frank Saravalli tweets out, sources say Minnesota Wild superstar Kirill Kaprizov's camp turned down an extension offer believed to be 8 years, $128 million in a meeting on Tuesday in Minnesota that would have made him the highest paid player in NHL history in both AAV at $16 million per and total dollars. Now, this sent some shockwaves through the NHL community because look, Kaprizov's a really good player. Really good player. Is he the guy that should probably get paid the most in hockey? No. Will he be one of the highest paid free agents in 2026, assuming he goes to unrestricted free agency? Yes. It'll be him, and it'll be Connor McDavid. And then the question is going to be, how much more is McDavid going to get paid? I mean, he's going to get the max. You could pay Connor McDavid $40 million, and it would be worth it. If Kaprizov turns down $16 million, there was this idea kind of thrown out there by some other national media pundits after the Saravalli tweet that the thought is Kaprizov would only turn down that offer if he thought there was more money to be made elsewhere. So then people start kind of putting things together. They think about the fact that the Flyers are supposed to get very aggressive. They didn't get super aggressive in 2025. They have a lot of money coming off the books, and it appears as though they have free agency in 2026 circled on their calendar with a highlighter and everything. So people started saying, all right, is there a chance that the Flyers back-channeled, that they're willing to break the bank for Kaprizov? Maybe. Is it possible that the Flyers have back-channeled to Connor McDavid, that they would break the bank? Who the hell knows? The funny thing is, like, this is where it gets cute, right? This is like in any league. Did the Flyers have a direct conversation with Kaprizov or with McDavid? No. Do their agents happen to represent other players in the NHL? Sure. Are front offices going to talk to agents? Sure. Are players going to talk to fellow players? Sure. Are players going to talk to their front office? Sure. There's an easy way to get information back and forth without directly tampering. I'm not saying the Flyers have done that. I'm just saying we all kind of know that the Flyers have a ton of money waiting for next season. The question is, why would you want to leave Minnesota to go to like a team like the Flyers? Is it to play on a line potentially with Matvei Michkov? Is having a budding superstar on your wing, on your line, is that of massive importance to a guy like McDavid or Kaprizov. You would think it probably would, but then you would also look top to bottom lineup-wise, and then you'd probably also look at the situation in net, and if you're McDavid and Stuart Skinner ain't doing it for you, and maybe Edmonton gets involved in Carter Hart, the Carter Hart sweepstakes, does that do enough to get you to stay in Edmonton? If it doesn't, would you actively leave that situation to come to Philadelphia, where you're going to probably have some combination of Sam Ersson and Dan Vladar, or maybe Zavragan plays out of his mind in the KHL and makes the team out of camp next year? I can't imagine he will, but maybe. Do we somehow believe that Alexei Kolosov or Ivan Fedotov are going to become bona fide number ones, Vezina candidates? Absolutely not. So it's interesting. So Kaprizov turns down this huge deal, and that gets people talking. And then on the Flyers front, we've seen a bunch of players getting on the ice. We've seen Trevor Zegras has been on the ice. We saw Tyson Forster was out in a non-contact jersey. Travis Konechny's out there. A bunch of guys are in town, which is good. People started freaking out, though, because there was a picture of a bunch of the players together. And it looks like the guys were golfing. And so some people started freaking out about the appearance of Matvei Mishkov and saying that it looked like Matvei Mishkov was gaining weight or Matvei Mishkov was getting a little bit chubby. And so then people got a little bit ridiculous. Oh, Tortorella's gone, and now he feels like he can go out and eat whatever. Honestly, who cares? I'm not pulling up the picture because I think one of them is manipulated. But like, if Mishkov goes out and has a fantastic sophomore season and gets close to the 80-point mark that I think he will, and gets close to scoring 35 goals this season, like I think he could, then no one's going to care how much bulk, we'll say, Mishkov added in the offseason. And by the way, also important to point out, and we say this every year, the way that Mishkov and these guys play in general, right? Because he's not the biggest guy on the ice. You lose weight over the course of a season. I mean, if you look at some of these guys in the locker room as they're getting the pads on, they're like in the Under Armour stuff. You look at the muscle mass on some of these dudes at the start of the season, and then midway through the season, and then the end of the season. In some cases, it looks like they're emaciated versions of the guys that you see coming out of training camp. So anybody who freaks out, anybody who gets in their feelings about, oh, is Matvei Mishkov in the best shape of his life or not, let it go. Now, the good news, if you're a Flyers fan, is that there are positive things happening around the team. There are positive things that could be coming very soon for people who are covering the team. There could be very interesting things on the horizon that would allow you to interact in a different way. Oh, and by the way, the players are going to be pretty good. Team is going to be better. And even though the goalie situation isn't as tenable as I was hoping it would be, I still think they're ultimately going to make the playoffs. Last thing I want to get to before we head out today, it is actually two things. One thing is very simple. This probably doesn't matter to many of you, but it does matter to me. There is a great color commentator on soccer who has retired from the sport and is a guy who brings absolute joy and energy to every game he's ever called. And that is none other than Ray Hudson. Now, I can't play a lot of the clips of Ray Hudson on the show because if I did, I would probably have to take the video down off of all platforms. But Ray Hudson announced earlier this week that he is stepping aside from his role with CBS Sports and SiriusXM. This is a guy that if you've ever heard a clip where there's a guy screaming in the background or we're saying, Magisterial! Or maybe you watched a Lionel Messi goal and you hear, it's a cross between a Ripier and a Stradivarius. That's Ray Hudson. And I wish that everybody who does the role that Ray Hudson did as a color commentator, I wish that they all had the same energy and enthusiasm and appreciation for the job that they have. Now, everybody's different. Some color commentators bring a lot of energy to the table. Some are more analytical, and they are about as fun as, watching paint dry. But this is somebody who loved what he did, and this is somebody who will be missed within the soccer community. So, Ray Hudson, here's to you. Thanks for all of the great calls, all of the memories. I don't think I'll ever forget being like a young teacher and getting BN on whatever my cable package was at the time and watching Ray Hudson and Phil Shane call a Clasico between Real Madrid and Barcelona. The guy was absolutely electric. So, Ray Hudson, here's to you. Last thing I want to get to is a media ranking. Now, I don't know how many of you have been following what's going on in the media sphere right now. I don't know how many of you have been keeping up with There's a Reddit about the Bill Simmons podcast, and they've been kind of taking these like quasi-passive shots at what Bill Simmons has been doing on his show, the quality of the show, all that kind of stuff. And they have their own podcast about Bill Simmons' podcast, which I find absolutely wild, but interesting at the same time. Awful Announcing did their list of the 25 most influential sports media personalities of the 2000s. We're going to take the comments down here for a sec so we can all see. Number 25, Colin Cowherd. I thought he would be higher. Okay, Ernie Johnson at 24. Feels like he should be higher. Michael Strahan at 23. I would not put him ahead of Ernie Johnson or Colin Cowherd, although Strahan is wonderful. Tony Romo feels like he's taken a bit of a slide the last few years. Pardon my take. Okay. Mike Florio, absolutely not. Not in the top 20. Dan Le Batard, makes sense, although some people have kind of soured on Le Batard. I like him. I enjoy his show. Okay. Stuart Scott makes sense because, again, we're not looking at it in terms of the impact they've had on media now. It's over the course of the 2000s. So it's the body of work. Stuart Scott, synonymous with SportsCenter, synonymous with what is really the golden era of SportsCenter, for people my age at least. You have Dan Patrick, Jim Nance, Kirk Herbstreit, feels like a little bit higher. Bob Costas, Joe Buck, okay. Skip Bayless, makes sense. Not only did he sit across the desk from Stephen A. Smith on First Take, but he also had Undisputed with Shannon Sharp for a good long while. That makes sense. Aaron Andrews feels high. Pat McAfee makes sense, although that's more of a second half of the 2000s. It feels like that's a meteoric rise for not as long of a period of doing this, but hard to disagree. Portnoy at number 8. You might like him, you might hate him. Influential, makes sense. Doris Burke at 7 to me is insane. Insane. We can all like Doris Burke. We can all appreciate Doris Burke as an analyst, as somebody who contributes in a meaningful way to NBA telecasts on ESPN. But number 7? No. I don't get it. Jeff Van Gundy's not on there. Mark Jackson isn't on there. They're not going to put the two of them together. I don't see Mike Breen. Is Mike Breen not on here? Okay. Scott Van Pelt makes sense at number 6. Schefter and Woj, okay, at number 5. That makes sense. Tony Kornheiser and Mike Wilbon at 4. That makes sense. Where's Tony Reali? I get that Tony Reali isn't doing a big TV show right now, but doesn't Around the Horn matter enough to make him somewhere in the top 25? I would say so. Charles Barkley at 3 makes sense. Stephen A. Smith at 2 makes sense. They have Bill Simmons at number 1. Now, there are a lot of people who seem to believe that Bill Simmons has lost his fastball. I got a text from somebody today who was remarking about the fact that Bill Simmons, who usually gets into all kinds of different topics, avoided the biggest news of the day, right, from a couple days ago, the Charlie Kirk assassination, and that Bill Simmons typically in the past probably would have talked about it, and he did not address it at all on his show. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. It feels like Simmons used to go right up to the line, and now he's gotten, I don't want to say comfortable or complacent. I don't know if this reported loss of Ryan Russillo from The Ringer is like adversely affecting him and his passion for what he's doing, but like, it's not quite at the same level that I would always expect of Bill Simmons. So make of that what you will. Last thing is this, because Bill Simmons took shots not that long ago at Pablo Torre and his reporting. And I think we showed the clip on this show of when Nico Harrison was eating dinner at a restaurant and somebody went up to him and was like, "Hey, Nico, we still hate you for trading Luka." There was a stage show. There was a summit that Mark Cuban was at. And Mark Cuban got into it with Pablo Torre this week. But that's not the big purpose here. Mark Cuban has started to get a little bit more vocal about his end of the time that he spent with the Mavericks. Remember, he sold controlling ownership of the team. And there was this thought that, like, all right, Mark Cuban's supposed to still stay around the team because people associated Mark Cuban very closely with the Mavs, the same way, probably even more so than the way that a lot of people in the 2000s attached Pat Croce to the Sixers. And so it seemed weird that Mark Cuban would go from being the guy who's all in Mavs to pretty much not being around the team, and also kind of openly calling into question the trade of Luka Doncic. There was an interesting nugget that came out of this media summit, and I want you to hear, and this is where it gets interesting, Mark Cuban kind of burning the ground a little bit, going a little bit scorched earth, why he isn't involved with the team in the way that he expected to be.
We know, and you sold the team. You explained it 50 different ways to Sunday, but there was this idea that you would still be involved to some extent.
Yeah, I fucked up. Yeah.
Well, there you go. I mean, that's a pretty honest assessment of what happened. All right, but how did he F up? Like, what went wrong for Mark Cuban at the end of his tenure with the Mavs?
Unpack it.
Yeah, I mean, when I did the deal, the presumption was that I would still be running basketball. And we tried to put it in the contract, but the NBA said the governor is the governor and they make all final decisions.
Which is, by the way, interesting because the alternate governor can replace the governor of the team at like owners' meetings if the governor is unavailable. This has actually been part of what's been happening with Dennis Wong, the alternate governor of the Clippers, in the Pablo Torre investigation, talking about Steve Ballmer and the fact that Ballmer owns 99% of the team. Dennis Wong owns 1% of the team. You can go look that up. Interesting that he wasn't even kept on, I guess, as this alternate governor. All right, let's keep going.
And then, I was involved, and then we went on this run where we went to the finals, and rather than trying to interject myself all the time, right, I was like, I don't want to get in the way. We're rolling.
When that happens, if you have been removed from your role and things are going well, and you don't make it known that you should be involved, and you don't get yourself involved, people are going to think it's going to run better without you. And that seems like what happened. All right, let's keep going.
And that was a mistake, right? Yeah. So there were some things that happened internally where, the person who traded Luka didn't want me there.
Oh!
And so
wow. So he says the person who traded Luka, which is Nico Harrison, didn't want Mark Cuban around anymore. Interesting. You always kind of wonder about the dynamics of the ownership level and the front office and how often they're truly in lockstep, how many times they're truly at odds with one another. I thought that was an interesting little nugget to end on today. Eagles play the Chiefs on Sunday, late Sunday afternoon. I have no idea how the game's going to go. I'm not giving you a prediction. My honest prediction would be that this team is going to go out and I think there's a better chance than not that the Eagles walk away with a win against the Chiefs on Sunday. I think it's going to be really, really close. How will Patrick Mahomes look without his top two wideouts? I don't know. The guy is still a magician. Do I think that the return of Jalen Carter is going to pay massive dividends for the Eagles defense? Yes. Am I absolutely petrified of what Adoree Jackson is going to look like as the second cornerback on this team going up against a great quarterback in Patrick Mahomes? Yes, I am very scared. But then again, if you're scared, get a dog. And I don't need a dog. I have too many kids as is. I don't need a pet as well. I'll talk to all of you on Monday. Until then, this has been the Russ Joy Show, and I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. Do me a favor, like the video, share the video, subscribe, and if you're on your favorite podcast app, leave a 5-star rating on Spotify, leave a 5-star rating and review over on Apple Podcasts. I'll talk to all of you Monday here on the Russ Joy Show.